Good morning. We're about to start. Good morning. My name is José Rosero Moncayo. I'm the director of the Statistics Division of FAO and one of the 4 co-chairs of the Food System Countdown to 2030 initiative. And I would like to thank all of you for attending this special event entitled Measuring Food Systems Transformation. The session aims to elevate the importance of measuring and monitoring food system transformation by introducing the work of the Food Systems Countdown to 2030 initiative that has developed a rigorous science-based information systems to track progress and guide action. It will also showcase 4 countries who can speak to their priorities and experiences around monitoring and about the potential to use the Food System Countdown Initiative Indicator Framework as a point of reference for the development of national monitoring systems. This session will start with an introduction that I will do on why measuring and monitoring food systems is important, and on what the Food System Countdown Initiative offers. This will be followed by reflections from Dr. Agnes Kalibata, former Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General for the Food System Summit of 2021. After that, we will have a panel discussion moderated by Dr. Lawrence Haddad, Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and also one of the co-chairs of the Food Countdown Initiative. He will moderate a discussion that will consist of the participation of representatives of 4 countries: Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Mexico, and Switzerland. They will be introduced later on. We will finalize, if time allows, with a brief space of Q and answers from the audience. So, let's start this introduction by reflecting on what is that motivates that in the context of this event, we have a session dedicated on measuring food systems. A simple answer to that is that we have all agreed that food systems are important and that there is the need to transform them in order to achieve the objective of providing access to sufficient, affordable, healthy, and safe food for all in a sustainable and equitable way. We also need to agree that we must be able to monitor progress towards these objectives. With less than a decade remaining to achieve the SDGs, the need to transform food systems must be accompanied by a monitoring mechanism based on a set of indicators across sectors that could guide decision makers. Such mechanism should give priority to monitor progress at national and subnational levels, but also should allow for global monitoring. One important point to make is that if we want to monitor food systems, we need a monitoring mechanism that goes beyond the SDG monitoring framework. We all know that food systems play an important and significant role in meeting all the 19 sustainable development goals. But while the SDG framework and the food system framework are complementary, they are not a perfect fit. It is precisely because they are not a perfect fit that the Secretary General of the United Nations called in 2021 for a food system summit in order to raise attention on the holistic and systemic nature of the agri-food systems and how they are related to the SDG agenda, but also, and more importantly, to reflect on what else we can do in order to reach the objectives of access to healthy and sustainable diets using an agri-food systems perspective. In this sense, the SDG monitoring framework comes short, and there is the need to complement it with one that can speak of the different dimensions of food systems. Now, one of the big results of the Food System Summit in 2021 was that countries around the world committed in developing national food system transformation pathways, which are roadmaps or strategies of the countries to transform their agri-food systems. Unfortunately, the Food System Summit didn't result in an agreement on the use of a scientific-based monitoring system to track progress in the implementation of these national pathway strategies. Therefore, countries do not have a reference to use for annual monitoring and to see how effective the policies designed for shifting the food systems are for reaching the objectives. Now, due to this lack of reference, or monitoring framework as we call it, the Food System Countdown to 2020 initiative was formed, and is above all an interdisciplinary multi-institution scientific partnership co-chaired by FAO, GAIN, Cornell and Columbia universities, but that also comprises more than 50 collaborators from multiple institutions and from different parts of the world that have decided to put their heads together in order to face this challenge. So the Food System Countdown initiative then aims to monitor food systems at global level, but providing, in an annual basis, actionable evidence to track progress, guide decision makers, and inform transformation. And it does so by using scientific-based, vetted data and indicators that are already available, ready to be used. At the same time, we aim that this indicator framework can serve as a point of reference for countries that are developing their national monitoring systems or that we like to complement the ones that they have right now. It also aims to advance the science of food systems by going beyond pure monitoring to also the analysis of food systems performance and the interaction that exists between different parts of dimensions of the system. So, in order to do all of this, to create this monitoring mechanism, one of the first tasks we needed to do was to put together a conceptual framework that can guide our monitoring system. So the first thing that we do is to adapt the food system framework given by the high-level panel of experts of the Committee on World Food Security, and from there, we laid out an architecture where we identify 5 thematic areas or dimensions of food systems. Out of these 5 areas, 3 focus on outcomes. These are diet, nutrition, and health, environment, natural resource and production, and livelihoods, poverty, and equity. These dimensions are complemented by 2 cross-cutting areas that focus on the governance of the food systems and also on the aspects of resilience and sustainability. In each of these thematic areas, we have indicator domains, which indicators can be finally mapped. Once we had this architecture in mind, the next step was to design and implement a mechanism that allow us to select indicators, the indicators to be part of each of the areas and each of the domains. The objective at the end was to have the best scientific grounded indicators that we have currently at our disposal. In order to do this, we follow a transparent and inclusive process that started with asking our 57 scientists or collaborators to identify a long list of potential indicators across the 5 thematic areas. And then we started a process of vetting the indicators. And for that, we ran a process of consultation that was supported by a survey that was completed by all of our collaborators first, and then also by a pool of external scientific experts. And we asked them to score each one of the indicators against criteria, such as feasibility, coverage, and scientific rigor. Because we wanted indicators where data already existed and with sufficient country coverage, and whose methodology was rigorous and transparent. Now, with the remaining indicators after this process of consultation, we run another round of consultation with policy makers or people that potentially could be users of this indicator framework. And we did it in 5 geographical regions, and more than 550 people participated in this consultation. And we asked them to assess the indicators by another layer of evaluative criteria. We asked them to assess them by relevance, high quality, and interpretability. At the end, we deem an indicator useful if they comply with these 3 evaluative criteria. All of this process finally resulted in an indicator framework that consists in 50 indicators across 5 domains. Of course, I will not be able to name each one of the 50 indicators, but please allow me to give you a flavor of them. On the domain of diets, we selected indicators that spoke about food environments, such as the availability of fruits and vegetables, or indicators that spoke about the cost of a healthy diet. For the domain of food security, we chose the 2 SDG indicators for food security. For the domain of diet quality, we chose a suite of indicators such as the MDDW or the all 5 indicator with measured consumption of the 5 food groups recommended by dietary guidelines. In the domain of environment, natural resources, and production, we selected indicators that spoke of the multiple environmental impacts of food systems, such as the level of greenhouse gas emissions, also on land use change, measured by cropland expansion, or indicators that spoke about pollution, measured by the overuse of pesticides. Continue with examples, and now in the domain of livelihoods, poverty, and equity, the framework added indicators that could capture employment and underemployment in the rural sector, and also on the coverage and adequacy of social protection systems, as they could in principle increase access to food and reduce risks. Now, in the domain of governance, we included indicators that could provide evidence, not only on the political commitment to adopt supported policies, but also in promoting participatory processes and accountability. Finally, on the dimension of resilience and sustainability, we included indicators that can describe the exposure to shocks, also the resilience capacities in order to respond to adverse effects, and on the actual resilience or coping strategies to face the different shocks that can compromise the access of the population to healthy diets. One important thing to say is that the resulting indicator framework maps closely to the themes and action areas that countries have identified as priorities in their food system transformation pathways. And this is vital. This is extremely important if we want this effort to serve as a point of reference for the development of national monitoring systems or to complement the existing ones. Now, as I already explained, one important selection criteria for indicators in our framework was to have data already available with enough country coverage in order to be used immediately to track progress. In this way, we put together a data set with more than 12,000 country-year observations covering as most countries that we could, with data available since the year 2000. The data set has allowed us to do a baseline analysis, the first one of our annual global monitoring effort that we have in this initiative. And we have put that together in a paper that is currently under review. For our baseline, we did different types of descriptive analysis. First, we analyzed the data at global level, focusing on the levels and trends in each one of our 50 indicators. Second, we did a regional baseline in which we were interested to see how results differ by geographical region and how they compare to global means. Third, we did analysis at the income group level to see if there is heterogeneity of our indicators across income groups, comparing, for example, the situation of low-income countries versus middle-income countries or high-income countries. Finally, within every income group, our baseline allows to analyze the heterogeneity that exists between countries across our indicators, trying to identify areas in which countries are performing better than others. Now, the baseline offers a trove of information that is valuable to guide policy at different levels of action, but it is clear that doesn't prescribe uniform actions. And one important takeaway of the analysis, the baseline analysis that we did, is that no country, regions, or income group exhibits the desirable status across all the indicators. It shows that every country can claim positive outcomes in some parts of the food systems, but none are among the highest ranked across all the domains, which simply means that there is indeed room for every country for the design of specific policies that can target action in some parts of the food systems. Another important takeaway of the baseline analysis is that the majority of the indicators are independent of national income, which underscores the need for a dedicated monitoring and transformation agenda that is specific for food systems. Another important aspect of this exercise is that it has allowed us to identify critical gaps that in many ways have conditioned our analysis. Therefore, there is embedded a call for action for all the data community to fill these critical gaps in the near term in order to better guide us in action in service of food system transformation. For example, we know very little about the economic value of food systems. We also know very little about the magnitude and composition of populations working in food systems. And we have very little information on the level and trends of food loss and waste at the country level. There is also sparse country and year coverage in specific themes such as adult diet quality, biodiversity of agro and food diversity. There is also the need to capture information across the value chain. We have a lot of information on the extremes of the value chain, in the production and consumption, but very little in the middle. And we also need additional indicators that are specific to food systems in the area of governance and resilience. To summarize, the Food System Countdown Initiative offers, first, a conceptual framework for food systems monitoring. Second, a comprehensive but yet actionable set of indicators that have been legitimated through consultative process and that offers a feasible starting point for monitoring food systems at global level, and that can complement other indicators framework to track development, health, or environmental goals. Third, the Countdown Initiative offers a menu of indicators that are relevant at the country level and that can serve as a reference point for developing national systems for monitoring, and that can be tested and modified to meet country needs. And finally, the Countdown Initiative offers a baseline dataset to track progress on food system transformation to 2030. With this summary ends the introduction of this session, and it's now my honor to introduce Dr. Agnes Kalibata, former Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations to the 2021 Food System Summit, that will address the audience with her reflections on the value of monitoring food systems. Dr. Kalibata, the floor is yours.
Good morning and welcome back to the Food Systems Conversations. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for bringing us here today, and thank you to FAO also for working with you to bring this work forward. I'm really happy to see you all today. Again, we did have a lot of conversations during the Food Systems Summit, and many of those were virtual, as you all remember. So to be able to have this conversation face-to-face is a huge, huge opportunity is something now we know we can't take for granted, having lived through so many behind-the-screen conversations. But the good news is everybody I meet, we seem to know each other, even though we've never met. So it's really, really good and great to see you all. Back to the conversation here today. I really wanted to appreciate the work that is being done. In case you don't know, I actually come from Rwanda. And the first thing I learned when I joined government in Rwanda was this statement: if you can't count, you don't count. That's how serious we take counting. So if you can't count, you're one of us and you can't count, you actually don't count. So that's how serious I understood coming into government. That's how serious I understood the nature of how seriously I needed to take the value of data and the value of the work that we were doing. Of course, that was building on the fact that I was a scientist and strongly believe in the role of evidence and data to define how we go forward. So it's good to see that this work has been done to create a framework that allows all of us to come together around how to think about a very complex system. The food system is extremely complex. So to have institutions work together to figure out how to take us forward, is something I applaud. But also to ensure that we work with the CFS, the HLPF, is it? And ensure that we have the right level of buy-in from scientists across the world. These scientists, all they do is ensure that we have a good sense. They make sure that all the work that is out there has been evaluated. And in a way, reassure us that this is good for us to take on. So again, I applaud the fact that you found the time to make sure that you engage with everybody. And we get a framework that is working for us all. It's great also that this framework goes backwards, goes as far back as 2000. In fact, coming from the African continent, I'm anxiously waiting to see what it will say about what has happened in the evolution of things. I do know there are going to be lots of gaps, but where you do have data, you will see that between 2000 and 2020, actually the African continent for the very first time was growing out of food insecurity, was growing very strongly, one of the fastest growing from a food production perspective. But that has now gone backwards, and I hope that we can recover from that. But that's the value of data. All this, it tells you all these things. So as we go forward, I'm looking forward to understanding a few things and making sure that we invest in a few things very deliberately. One, we need to invest in data and ensuring data availability, but also data quality. There's so much that we say about data, but we still have so many data gaps, as was highlighted by the presenter. So I do think that as we build coherence, as we build frameworks, we need to go deeper, a little bit deeper into finding a framework that really assures us that we actually can consistently have data showing up for every country. Maybe it needs to go beyond, because now we do have lots of technologies. Maybe we need to agree with the countries on how to take data that is not based on individual counts at country level, but actually can use some of the available technologies to help us capture a lot of information. So that's number one. Number two, I do hope that this also provides an opportunity for us on the African continent who are looking to build on the work we've done in Kadap and Marabu. We are entering into our second biggest phase of how this work is monitored. We are looking to not base it on agricultural systems and agriculture as we know it, but to base it on food systems, to base it on the new understanding of food systems. So my team, for example, at Agro has been working with NEPAD already to try to understand what elements of the food system we can introduce into this type of monitoring, and anything we can learn from this process to ensure that we do the right thing. We would like to do the right thing and to work with you all to do the right thing. I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't now understand the need to do the right thing by food systems. And if they don't, they soon will. But for many of those that do, we need to give them means of measuring and tracking progress. I also do hope that we do realize now, more than ever before, that we are a global village. COVID-19 showed us that one thing that happens in one part of the world soon happens everywhere else. But so many other things have happened since. All sorts of crises have happened since that show us how interconnected we are. And the food system is one of those that actually, I mean, in my own country, to be honest with you, how many people knew that the food, the wheat or the bread we eat comes from Ukraine or comes from, Russia or comes from anywhere? But we sooner than later, you realize just how interconnected we are and how challenges in our value chains, in our trade systems can completely put to question how the world works, how we feed ourselves, how we feed our children. And the role of data is just that, to help us understand some of these things we take for granted, to help us understand the type of policies we make and how we work together around those policies and how we facilitate each other around those policies. One of the things that is coming out very strongly from an African continent perspective, we just didn't understand the role of diversity of food systems. But you know what? I do completely believe that our ability to survive the last 4 years of COVID-19 crisis or Russia-Ukraine crisis is of the diversity of Africa's food systems that has helped us survive. I don't think we give it enough credit, but again, data will help us pull out some of those and help us understand where in the food systems we have the strongest capability to feed ourselves, the strongest comparative advantage to feed ourselves, and the strongest opportunity to advance investments, but also the strongest capability and ability to cooperate with the rest of the global village that I just described that is trying to work with all of us. So I was given 5 minutes. I think they are over, but again, I just wanted to thank you for embracing the work we are doing now. I want to appreciate the countries that have stepped forward and are part of this initiative of really being the flag bearers of what we are trying to do here in terms of countdown. I mean, of counting and really ensuring and embedding the role of data in the work that we do and start showing how data can be the basis, we already know is the basis of the policies we are designing, but can be a strong, strong basis for how we advance food systems. So I look forward to these conversations, and again, I appreciate you all being here, and thank you again, Lawrence, FAO, and others that have participated in getting this work going. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Kalibata, for those wonderful remarks and reflections that you have given to us. But now let me pass the torch to Dr. Lawrence Haddad, Executive Director of the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, that will guide us in moderating this panel. Dr. Haddad.
Thank you. Thank you, Jose. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Thank you, Agnes, and thank you, Jose. Great reflections, great introduction. I was reflecting, the only time I've ever walked out of a meeting, stormed out of a meeting, was in this building 30 years ago. Of course, I was a young, impetuous man back then, now deeply wise and not impetuous. And it was over data. I think it was your predecessor from 30 years ago, was being very difficult about sharing data, about getting access to data. And me being very impatient, I just said, can't deal with this anymore. How far we've come in the last 30 years. Now we're openly sharing, everyone is sharing data. All data is open access. And in fact, there's too much data. So this is an attempt, if we want to measure food systems, to try to boil it down to 50 essential indicators. And it's been, data and measuring things is very uncomfortable. Whenever I'm asked whenever anyone wants to measure anything about gain, I get nervous. What are they going to find out about us? How are they going to frame it? Who are they talking to? So I'm very proud of this process, because this process that has gone through 57 scientists, 550 policy stakeholders, come up with 50 indicators in 5 domains with 12,000 data points. It's been very transparent, very inclusive, and very objective, very scientific. So I'm very happy about that. Why do we need data? Why do we need to measure food systems? Well, we all want to transform food systems, all of us. We all keep saying that. But how do we know if we're doing it? It's a very basic question. And so we need the data, but we need the right data, and we don't need reams and reams of data. We need data that's going to speak to us, that's going to tell us what's going on. Without data, all we have is opinions. So we need the data. We're very lucky on this panel to have 4 representatives from 4 different countries who deeply care about not only transforming their food systems and supporting the transformation of food systems, but actually measuring whether it's happening or not. I'm going to introduce the panel as a group, and then I'm going to ask them questions. We'll have 2 rounds of questions panel. And I gave you 3 minutes, but it'd be great if you can do it in 2, if that's possible. So we have the first on my right, we have Mr. Montaz Udin. Montaz is the Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Food in Bangladesh. He's also the DG of the Food Policy Monitoring Unit in the Ministry of Food, and he's the National Convener for food systems in Bangladesh. Welcome, Dr. Udin. Then we have Dr. Getachew Faye at the end on the left. He is from Ethiopia. He's a senior researcher at ILRI, the International Livestock Research Institute. He is an agricultural economist with lots of experience in working in food systems. He's also an M&E expert, and he's been working a lot on the Ethiopia food system transformation. We then have Dr. Roy Lopez. Roy's there. He's got a PhD from Harvard School of Public Health. He's a nutrition epidemiologist. He's the DG of the Center for Preventative Programs and Disease Control in Mexico, the Ministry of Health. And he is the national convener of the food system in Mexico. And then to my right, we have Marilou Kata, and she is the head of food systems at the Swiss Development Corporation. And she's got extensive experience working in many different regions of the world on food, agriculture, and environment. And she's managing many innovative food system programs for SDC, working with lots and lots of different partners. So, colleagues, let me start with you, Dr. Udin. Why is it even important to measure or monitor food systems? And what is the government of Bangladesh doing to do that?
Thank you very much for asking these questions. It is a very important question for Bangladesh, for us. The food is the basic needs of each and every life, not only for human being. It is the requirement for every life. So this food system also related with the SDGs. So we are very much focusing on these two issues. So monitoring is the very important tools to measure or to track the progress of any initiative or any project, to track the changes made by undertaking any project, any programs, or any initiative. So monitoring, without monitoring, we cannot measure any system, any program, even the food system transformations. Where we are now, what is the way we are following, whether we are in the right track or not, on what will be our next destination. These are to be measured, and what improvement has been made by this time, these are to be measured by monitoring the food system transformations. But as you've said, that we have set the 50 indicators. So these are very important to measure any program, any projects, or anything what we like, food system transformations. Without indicators or without the data, it is not possible to measure the food system transformation. So monitoring is very important for our country. We are keen, we are focusing on this issue seriously so that we can achieve our Agenda 2030. And you know that we have a very important vision, Vision 2041. What is Vision 2041? That is the very important vision set by our present government. We want to be the high-income country in the world in 2041. And to achieve these visions, we have been working very confidentially with so many projects in collaboration with the RVS like FAO, IFAD, WFP, and GAIN also. They are always with us. So other development partners are always with us. So the monitoring is very important for us.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Udin. Getachew, over to you. Over to you. Yes, same question.
Thank you very much. The need for food systems for Ethiopia is very well recognized. Because of this, Ethiopia has had a very strong response to the UN Food Systems Summit process. And the country has already developed a common vision to help align all food system actors around it, tracking progress toward the intended vision and the goals across 6 clusters that have been developed, and that 6 clusters of game-changing solutions is important for the country. Monitoring will help to identify deviation from the expected transformation early enough to redirect process in a positive direction. It will help to align with other related efforts across the country because so many projects are going on in the country. So in order to align these projects, we need to monitor the full system and where each project is going in terms of contributing towards the food system's transformation. It can also generate evidence to inform both policy and the private sector decisions towards attaining the common vision. It can help inform accountability perspective across different actors and stakeholders to ensure that all use the common vision to guide their efforts. In general, monitoring food systems transformation is a critical step in the food systems transformation in Ethiopia. We are working towards developing a food system transformation monitoring framework. I will talk about what we are really doing currently in subsequent questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Getachew. And interesting that both Bangladesh and Ethiopia panelists talked about vision. If we can't measure things, we don't know how we are progressing towards the vision. They both talked about accountability, and they both talked essentially about course correction. If you don't know what's going on, you're flying blind. Dr. Lopez, Rui, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Voy a hablar en español, si me permiten. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por la invitación a este foro y coincido totalmente con los que me precedieron en felicitar el trabajo de este grupo que ha puesto una serie de indicadores en este proceso transparente con una gran participación de tanto sectores académicos como de policy makers, cosa que fue muy útil y para nosotros es un gran producto. ¿Cómo leemos, qué tan cercano está este proceso a lo que estamos haciendo en el Gobierno de México? Es una cosa difícil de implementar en el sentido de que nosotros hemos priorizado el poder medir la transformación de un marco legal, marco normativo, el decir que ya estamos haciendo una serie de estrategias y avanzando en las estrategias que están posiblemente lejanas a los indicadores de impacto que nos está marcando el grupo. Creemos que esta es una parte que nosotros hemos identificado como clave. Para la transformación era necesario una transformación total del marco normativo, del marco legal, porque si no, no se iba a lograr. Sin embargo, también hemos priorizado algunos indicadores para medir el impacto de estos cambios transformadores, principalmente en los indicadores de impacto que pueden ser en dieta, en indicadores de salud, en indicadores de uso de tierra, que sabemos bien que van a tener un impacto tal vez en los próximos 5 o 10 años de los cambios legales que estamos haciendo. Por eso creo que es importante tener este balance entre las disposiciones de gobernanza, de política pública y también el poder contar con los indicadores duros de impacto que nos están solicitando en este grupo global y de indicadores prioritarios. Y con mucho gusto ya en la siguiente ronda podré comentar un poco de lo que siento yo o sentimos nosotros que falta en esta discusión de los indicadores globales. Gracias.
Thank you, Roy. And I forgot to mention that translation, of course, is available, but I'm sure you figured that out. I think Roy's point is very important, that we can't wait 5 to 10 years for the impact indicators to shift, if they do shift. to tell us that we are transforming the food systems. We need some indicators that are going to tell us our efforts are likely to bear fruit after 2 or 3 years. And that's about policy shifts, regulations, and resource allocations, public and private. So we need to track those to give us a sense that things are likely to change and move in the right direction. There's a really interesting session on this tomorrow on public sector finance allocations to food systems. Finally, Mary Law, same question to you.
Thank you. I think we are like the other countries. We want to know whether we're going into the right direction. And first, I would like to say that the Food System Summit, the preparation and the follow-up has been a fantastic driver for Switzerland, both at national and international level, to approach food in a systemic way. It's probably the same for many other countries. We compared the countdown initiative indicator with what we have currently in Switzerland, and we can see that our decision makers have access to fairly good data on environment, natural resource, and production. We have data on farm output, of course, but we lack data concerning water use or soil health, for example. We have data on diets, nutrition, and health. We know what food is sold in stores, but we don't know exactly what and how people eat or how much food they throw away, as we heard earlier on. We have some measures of equity, such as income at household level, employment in the food system, or land tenure rights. But Switzerland doesn't have yet, maybe, a system in place to bring together on the same dashboard indicators, for instance, on resilience. Monitoring our national food system pathway for transformation is very linked to the Swiss Strategy for Sustainable Development 2030 that was adopted in 2021. And this strategy has 3 priorities: sustainable consumption and production, climate, energy, and biodiversity, and equal opportunities and social cohesion. And actually, sustainable food systems cut through all these themes, but is listed under consumption and production. So I think it's interesting to see that the architecture of data collection is very often a response to a policy direction, as much as it provides evidence to choose the right action. We just started a survey on dietary behavior among adolescents and children to further develop Switzerland's nutrition strategy for the coming year and complement an extensive and comprehensive study done in 2015 for adults. And I think what is important, and I would like to underline how crucial is it to have data disaggregated by age and gender to reveal the diversity and inequalities where they exist and to tailor a better response to some of the main challenges in the food systems. Another issue is that data has different levels, and we need to collect data at subnational level. This is, of course, more difficult. We need to have it to examine territorial food systems, and we very often lack this granularity. Although some of the cities, like the city of Zurich, is really going into the right direction and doing progress on that. A final point is we look at what's happening in Switzerland. We also monitor what Switzerland's international engagement in food system is. And just 2 examples, we are using since 2019 the OECD nutrition policy marker, which cuts across sectors and allows us to keep track of our commitment for nutrition, and we, of course, encourage other countries to adopt it. And secondly, we created a marker to measure how much of our portfolio budget is dedicated to agroecology. This was an exercise we started a few years ago, and we now share it with the coalition, and we hope it will contribute to find a common approach on monitoring this transforming approach.
Thank you, Mary-Laure. It's really, I must commend you for, I think as an SDC person, head of food systems, it would have been easy for you to talk about your role as an STC official, but you've gone with the spirit of this summit and the follow-up process, which is to talk about the Swiss food system. I really appreciate that. And it's great to see that the countdown framework has allowed you to identify gaps in the Swiss data architecture. Your point about granularity is very well taken. I don't like to talk about gain in events like this, but we are working with 8 different countries, including Bangladesh and Ethiopia, on subnational food system dashboards. And the 8 countries cover 2.5 billion people. So I'm enthusiastic and optimistic about that. And that, of course, will feed into the Countdown initiative at the subnational level, too. Colleagues, does the Countdown initiative inspire you, make you think that you could use some aspects of it, or you could, engage with it at all? Does it, how does it feel to you, Dr. Mumtaz?
Yeah, Thank you very much. Food System Countdown Initiative is one of the very significant initiatives, and it is very much needed to measure everything. But I want to say one thing, that we have developed a very important website, that is the Bangladesh National Dashboard, Bangladesh National Dashboard, Bangladesh Food System Dashboard. That is, in this dashboard, it is made to the global standard, and it has been made by GAIN, and especially their contribution is and FPA together. And the other relevant ministries helped with these issues. In the GAIN, all kinds of data are available regarding food system in Bangladesh. That we have collected data from the various ministries' divisions, and data still we will very soon we'll launch this national dashboard, so that the dashboard will help to compare the food systems situation with the other countries, or even the national and subnational level. That is a very important initiatives we have undertaken in collaboration with GAIN especially. I thank GAIN for their contributions. And I think we have the national pathway document, and also we have the country's investment plan. That is one of the unique investment plan in the world. So the country's investment plan shows the many things, so that if you and it is available in the website. So if you go through the country's investment plan, you will see the full pictures of our country's investment plan. So this food system counter initiative, I appreciate it, because it is a great initiative to measure even after 2 years what will be happened in the food system transformation in the food system of our country. So and then UNFSS, now it is UNFSS+2, then it will be UNFSS+4, then UNFSS+6. So this way it will be continuing. It is a continuing effort. So we have a lot of indicators we have already set, but a few data gap is still there. So within this period, we will be able to measure our food system transformation, setting with the 50 indicators, as you have mentioned. So I think it is a very, food system counter initiative is very important, and we must follow to measure our improvement and development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mumtaz. It's good to hear that it might be helpful for you. Of course, every country will want to adapt it to its own needs. And I would encourage you, there's a session that the Bangladesh government is hosting, I think it's at 2:30 today.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary what the country has achieved over the last 15 to 20 years. So I encourage you to go to that. Getachew, how does this help you?
Thank you very much. CGR is a knowledge partner to the Ethiopian Food Systems Transformation Pathway, and we are part of the technical task force in the implementation process. We have been given the role to lead development of the monitoring and evaluation framework, together with government organizations and other partners, including GAIN. The viewpoint published by the Food Systems Countdown Initiative is one of the resource materials in development of the monitoring and evaluation framework for Ethiopian food systems transformation. Fortunately, one of the authors of the viewpoint paper and subsequent work by the Food Systems Countdown Initiative is leading the CGR team in supporting the food system transformation pathway. Dr. Namakullo is, this person is Dr. Namakullo Kovic, and we have got introduced to the viewpoint paper early on the process, and we have been referring this material throughout developing the draft monitoring and evaluation framework for Ethiopian food systems transformation. Under the supervision of Dr. Namakullo, we are working on the draft monitoring and evaluation framework that will be reviewed, validated, and endorsed by the government. We are keen to see how future developments of the food systems countdown 2030 will help us in this process. Related to the data, the type of data to be used, we are considering different sorts of data to be used for monitoring and the food systems. Data from Ministry of Health, Ethiopian Public Health Institute, Ethiopian Statistical Services, the World Bank, and other sources will be used. Data for some of the indicators will be collected where government, where there is no readily available data. During the food systems development process, the guidance from the government was that we should not limit ourselves only to available data, and so we can really look for primary resources in this regard. We can also consider the baseline data that the Food Systems Countdown Initiative has used in testing the 50 indicators in this process. So we are in the process of developing the food systems transformation pathway monitoring framework, and this is not really a final work. We are working with partners. This work will be validated and endorsed by the government. Once it is endorsed, it will be tested, and we are looking for resources to build baseline, full-fledged baseline for this monitoring and evaluation framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Getachew. And I think it's really important that we all try to work together as much as we can. So Namakullo is who you mentioned as part of the Countdown Initiative, so there's connection there. AGRA has been, is working with us on the Countdown to see what we can do to, for the AGRF and for CADET. So we need to join all of these things together. Thank you. Roy, over to you.
Gracias. Sí, creo que nosotros, lo que nos queda después de ver este grupo de 50 indicadores en 5 dominios, y coincido con el colega de Bangladesh, lo que necesitamos ahora es ver cómo se mueven estos 50 indicadores a nivel subnacional. Muchos de ellos, al menos en México, son difíciles de medir a nivel subnacional, y creo que esa es una de las cuestiones que tal vez nos va a limitar en nuestro proceso de utilizar estos indicadores para mover la política pública, porque debemos reconocer todos la gran heterogeneidad que representa en muchos países este tipo de indicadores. Y para mover cualquier política pública de transformación necesitamos tomar en cuenta la heterogeneidad regional o por grupos de nivel socioeconómico. Entonces, por eso la desagregación de los indicadores es muy importante. Ahora, ¿qué consideramos también como que tal vez falta? Digo, creo que el proceso ha sido muy importante, pero voy a poner algunos puntos que consideramos que van a ser importantes para esta nueva fase de este grupo que ha trabajado de manera tan exitosa. Creo que una de las cosas que tal vez falta es el pensar sobre cómo se mueven estos indicadores en este mundo global. Como que parecería que todos los indicadores se mueven por políticas públicas locales o en cada país, cuando sabemos que también hay factores globales, especialmente en comercio global, que mueven estos indicadores. Y no está muy claro cómo no hay indicadores de comercio internacional, de comercio global, de intercambio entre países, y creo que esta es una parte que es importante de incluir en este marco global de transformación. Y creo que también en esto es importante considerar qué tanto los países están adheridas a recomendaciones internacionales claramente establecidas. Por ejemplo, hay un código internacional para el mercadeo de sucedáneos de leche materna, y creo que es muy importante entender qué países se adhieren, cómo se adhieren, lo siguen, no lo siguen. Creo que también hay una lista importante de recomendaciones sobre diferentes agroquímicos, el decir qué países están o no prohibiendo agroquímicos. Tenemos una gran heterogeneidad, y creo que también es una de las cosas que tenemos que ir monitoreando. También en el etiquetado frontal de alimentos hay una serie de diferencias. Hay países que están considerando el utilizar estos etiquetados de advertencia, hay otros países que no. Tenemos recomendaciones internacionales y creemos que son importantes estar midiendo cómo se adhieren estos países. Creo que el otro factor que es importante considerar es el cómo lograr que los países decidan, a veces poco, y lo dicen y lo dijeron en la introducción, parece que hay condiciones locales en donde ciertos países deciden favorecer ciertos indicadores. Y creo que tenemos que considerar cuáles indicadores se tienen que mover, es obligatorio mover, porque si no parecería como que se escoge por lo más fácil, por lo más factible y no necesariamente por lo que refleja la transformación sistémica. Y creo que ahí se ha hecho un esfuerzo para encontrar los pathways causales, pero creo que también tenemos que encontrar cuáles son estos indicadores que realmente están hablando de la transformación sistémica y no solamente de cada uno de los dominios para que lo movamos de una manera coherente, consistente hacia la transformación total. Y creo que también hay una serie de elementos que posiblemente sean difíciles de medir, pero que los países estamos considerando, que tiene que ver más con la parte subnacional, pero también la de pequeños y medianos productores. No queda claro dónde los pequeños y medianos productores están encontrando una transformación en el sistema. Posiblemente se traduzca en uso de tierra o en la producción de gas de tipo invernadero, pero no queda claro dónde está el comercio y si queremos impulsar una política pública de pequeños y medianos productores, compras locales, en donde también se puede disminuir la pobreza de ciertas regiones. Creo que tenemos que pensar en indicadores que lo puedan medir. Gracias.
Great, thank you. Really good comments. Need to disaggregate indicators some more at the local level, but also don't forget about the global factors that are shaping national policy responses and subnational responses. Is there enough on policy and regulations and adherence to those policies and regulations? And have we done enough on small and medium enterprises? Thank you. Really, really excellent comments. Mary-Laure.
Okay, I think the initiative is good because it helps us to compare at the global level. We have, for instance, support the Global Diet Quality Project, and this dimension is one of the indicators. And we decided also to run this survey in Switzerland in addition to this other survey I mentioned earlier on. 3 very quick points from our side. I think let's put at the heart of the decision people. This is one of the point taken from the just negotiated CFS policy recommendation on data. We did that also supporting, for instance, citizen science, an initiative called 1 Million Voices of Agroecology. Secondly, how complement this initiative with all the efforts to track financial flows and investment. I think it will be discussed in another session. And third, we appreciate that the crucial contribution of science and research is coming from very different variety of institutions, and collectively we need to continue to enhance the visibility and impact of all public research and development activities and to demonstrate the relevance of science and research to ensure transparency and accountability.
Thank you, Mary-Laure. Don't forget about financial flows. Keep the collaboration going across disciplines, across regions. Be inspired by what happened in COVID-19, where all these researchers from all over the world said we need to work together, not apart. Colleagues, we've run out of time. We don't have any time for questions from the floor. I leave you with 2 comments. The first, I want to remind you what Agnes Kalibata said right at the beginning. If you can't count, you don't count. And I want to add, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So we all want food system transformation. How do we know we're achieving it? Measure it. Thanks, colleagues. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.